All right, now that I'm back from my vacation, I want to do another video on gold, maybe a little bit more in depth, and I shouldn't have any problem with the volume on this one. All right, so we've got our correction into obviously a daily cycle low, and we've got a reversal off of this support zone so far anyway. Now, this is Friday, today's move back down. This is obviously this happens basically on every options expiration. The cartel will allow or manufacture a rally like a day or two before the options expiration. Then they'll attack the metals on options expiration, and they'll trigger the stops for the people that bought on that bait, so to speak, right before options expiration. So nothing unusual happening here. It's just the cartel fleecing gold bugs after setting the trap on Wednesday and Thursday. So I think this is kind of meaningless at the moment anyway. Presumably, gold will reverse early next week and will continue the bounce out of this daily cycle low. So if, as I explained in my last couple of my last videos, if this turns out to be a kind of a weird intermediate cycle low, as I'd noted before, that in triangle consolidations, which we have here, cycles don't really work, and you get really strange cycle counts, and then in that scenario, then this would kind of qualify as an intermediate cycle low, even though it didn't really complete any of the normal parameters of an intermediate cycle low. It didn't create a failed daily cycle. So just assuming that that is what is going on, and not that this is a really stretched intermediate cycle, that in that scenario, what would happen is we would bounce here and maybe make a test of 2,000 and then roll over and come down and test this lower triangle trend line, this larger triangle. Let me pause this and I'll see if I can draw that in. All right, so this is kind of what I'm looking at for this larger triangle. I'm not really convinced that that's what's going on here. I would have expected this intermediate rally to come up and tag this upper trend line if that was what was happening. So I think this is the lower probability event, that we get a left translated daily cycle that comes down, breaks this low, and then maybe has to come down and tag this lower trend line or retest this breakout before we start a new intermediate cycle. So again, I'm not convinced that that's the high probability event. I'm going to say that scenario maybe has 25% probability of playing out. I think probably the better odds are that this is just a weird intermediate cycle low in that triangle consolidation I pointed out. This is the first daily cycle in a new intermediate cycle. And let me put the RSI in there. All right, so as you can see, RSI coming out of this move embedded in the overbought condition, which is characteristic of the advancing phase of an intermediate cycle. Also characteristic of an intermediate cycle is that price will completely recover all of the intermediate losses during the first daily cycle, and in this case it recovered all of the losses from the initial all-time high. So that makes me think that this is that the way we should view this is as a first daily cycle in the advancing phase of a new intermediate degree rally. And the next daily cycle, which I think there's a decent chance we're starting right now, will come up and break out above these all-time highs, and then we'll get a sustained move higher. That's what I think is going to play out based on the observations that I've laid out here. Now, if that does play out, then I think silver is setting up for a really big move. All right. Again, notwithstanding today's attack, this is meaningless. This is just options expiration. This is the cartel fleecing people that bought, on their setup the last 2 days. So, try and ignore this. But as I've noted before, in the silver tends to move later in the intermediate cycle. And when it does, it moves really big and really fast. And you can see that's what happened right here. So one of two things could play out here. If gold is ready to break out above those all-time highs during a second daily cycle, then I think silver is going to set up and test the upper part of this long sideways basing pattern, which would be a run to about $30, which is a pretty decent move. But I also think there is lesser potential, I'll put it that way, but I think there is the potential that if silver can get a pretty strong move up to this upper part of this consolidation box, $30, and do it fairly quickly in this daily cycle, then there is a very good chance that silver could break out above this $30 and make a very powerful and aggressive move to $50. So something that looks like this right here, where we just rocket launch out of the basing pattern. You can see this is what happened here when it broke out above this resistance. Silver just went nuts to the upside. The same thing would happen here when silver breaks out of this resistance here at let's just call it $30. Then it's going to unleash a massive buying event that could take silver from $30 to $50 literally in 2 weeks. So that is potentially on the table. We just need to get there pretty quick during this second daily cycle, because we need to break out of this early in the second daily cycle to get that kind of a sustained move. And then that would probably be the top of the intermediate cycle in metals. And at that point, gold would probably, wherever it's at, it would probably have to come back down and then retest that breakout at roughly 2090-ish, I guess, before the next intermediate cycle would begin. So a potential really big setup in play for silver if we get if this is a first daily cycle in gold. And it looks like it probably is.